Hi YouTube. It's time to weigh in again on the hypocrisy of the left and all these violent protesters that we've seen, in the run up to the election, during the election process, before inauguration, on inauguration day, and then last night, UC Berkeley, violence erupts. They're throwing rocks and setting things on fire, and really, this just continues to expose the hypocrisy of the left, who supposedly stand against corporatism, stand for free speech, stand against violence, and yet those are exactly what they're promoting in all of their efforts recently. It's obvious that this one doesn't really reflect the views of most Americans, right? What's going to happen is this going to drive people who are sort of centrist Democrats away from the party. We're visibly witnessing the free fall destruction of the Democratic Party with this kind of behavior, because they're exposing themselves as total hypocrites. Right? They want to block a gay conservative speaker who isn't even an American citizen. They want to prevent him from exercising free speech in this country because free speech, right? Because, hate speech should be blocked. No, actually, free speech is the right to say something offensive. And if free speech doesn't protect the most offensive speech, then it's useless. Right? You need to be worried about what people are doing, not what people are saying. It's when people start doing bad things that we have to get in the way and protest and stop them. And so the same applies to these Black Lives Matter protesters who want to talk about killing people and all that stuff. You know what? That is their right to say that. And what happens is it turns most people off and they ignore them, and so nothing becomes of that, right? It's not a threat to anyone for them to stand out there and say, we're going to kill all these white people, because most people are just going to ignore them, and not pay attention to the terrorists. But the left is trying to conflate actions with ideology. They want to try and get you to believe that saying something is the same as doing the thing that you're talking about in a lot of cases. And so that, in their mind, justifies, their right to go out and destroy public and private property. So, and just from looking at some of the news reports and that footage, from people near or experiencing that event, it seems like the police have sort of been given a hands-off, stand down kind of order. And that's fine. That's what you expect from a leftist community like that, is to promote the violence of their side while denouncing the other side as hateful and violent, right? Total hypocrisy. But so what needs to happen is the communities need to just get together and muzzle these people, right? If that were happening in this area, people would rise up and go put a stop to that, I'd like to think. Or we would have the police do it for us, maybe. That seems a little authoritarian. It is what it is, though. If that's what your community needs and everyone agrees that that's what we're going to do, I suppose there's no difference between a lynch mob doing it and having the police as your lynch mob. So it's really just totally appalling that anyone could stand behind this kind of rhetoric or this kind of behavior. But of course, this is what the left has been trying to do for decades and decades: is infiltrate free countries, free communities, and try and change the minds of people. Which is why this is happening in academia, right? One of their most successful endeavors has been to infiltrate the education system of Western civilizations in order to promote Marxist ideology by teaching it to people from a young age and just continuing to pound them with that kind of nonsense throughout their educational experience as they become adults. And so there's, if this is what higher education has become in the United States, there's going to be no need for higher education. People can return to a classical education where they educate themselves, seek a vocation. California actually is a great example of this. In California, it's one of the states in our union where if you study the law, you can become a lawyer. You don't have to go to some Ivy League university and pay a bunch of money to get a law degree. You don't have to, abide by all kinds of silly regulations. If you can study the law and pass the bar, then that's good enough. You know the law, and that makes you a lawyer. So it's just totally crazy that that the left is going to try and get behind these people who are so violent and so vocal about their violence and so okay with it. And of course the leftist media is going to promote this kind of activity like, yeah, this is what brings America together, this is what unity is, this is people exercising their right against tyranny, and it's just going to serve to expose the fact that their behavior is tyrannical, it is fascist, it does support corporate oligarchy. These are not protests, these are riots, these people are domestic terrorists. And people like George Soros are funding this behavior because they want to widen the divide between the American people and promote a civil war. And because that's profitable, because it sells bullets, it sells guns, and there will be lots of infrastructure to rebuild after such an event. So that's what's happening, that's what's going on, and people should be prepared that, this is the direction our country is heading. Is it going to happen this year? Is it going to happen in this, 4 years of Trump's presidency, or is it going to happen sometime in the next decade? It's hard to say, but it's pretty obvious that that is the inevitable conclusion of this series of events, is that the division between the people in the United States, between the people who have been imported here to promote Marxism and the people who come here by choice to promote freedom, and who were born here and choose to promote freedom, or who were born here and choose to promote Marxism, right, depending on your background and sort of how you've been propagandized, right? So this is the end result, is to sort of facilitate the rise of the Starbucks Marxists against the free people of Western cultures. And so, I would urge you to consider how you're going to be prepared for such an event. The Discovery Channel and a lot of this sort of mainstream nonsense wants you to think that being prepared is like something that you do if you believe in zombie apocalypse or some kind of nonsense like that, right? The FEMA camps and all that bullshit. But being prepared really is just about evaluating the situation and taking a look and saying, well, here's the spectrum of possibilities, and this is what I'm going to do in preparation for each of those possibilities. And I see it as, there's a almost 100% certainty that the economy cannot be fixed, not even by Donald Trump, even if he tries his hardest, which I don't fully support all the decisions he's making, and I'm not sure that he's going to be as successful as some Trump supporters think he is. But at the same time, I'm still preparing for the normalcy of life too, right? The fact that that doesn't necessarily have to happen right away. It might be a long time in the future, a few years at least, before the economic bubble created by Obama, right? The Obama housing policies have created another housing bubble. There's a derivatives bubble that's going to pop. There's a debt bubble that's, a pretty desperate situation. Places like California can't afford to pay their state workers, and they think that they're going to secede and be able to pay federal workers. Oh wait, and they can't even provide their citizens with water. They have to purchase it from nearby states. Go ahead, California. Get out of the United States and we won't sell you any water, and you can just shrivel up and go away. that's what would happen when California tries to secede from the Union, is they won't be able to support themselves. They won't have water to grow all of that food. Of course, we'll suffer a little bit here in the rest of the United States also, because we depend on a lot of that agriculture to fill our grocery shelves, but that's another story. So the Federal Reserve is making moves to pop the bubbles that it has created so they can blame it on Donald Trump, which is fine, whatever. Let them blame it on him. It's inevitable. It is going to happen, and I think he's aware of that. He realizes he's presiding over a bankruptcy, which is why he's doing some of these things that people disagree with, like the pipelines, which I think is very regrettable. But I think in his mind, he sees it as a hedge against this economic disaster that seems to be snowballing down the hill towards us. So yeah, it's kind of a long rant, not necessarily as cohesive maybe as it should be, but the general theme here is be prepared for more violence from the left. Be prepared for them to do everything they can to start a civil war, because that's the Starbucks Marxist agenda. Thanks for listening.